Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where every day we try to simplify technology and put it in a language that everyone can understand. And hey, if we get everyone on the same page, who knows? Maybe we can organically get everyone on the same page, attract talent to the space, investors, partners, and increase adoption. And today, I want to tackle the subject of decentralized autonomous organizations. And I've invited José Pinto from Aragon onto the podcast, where he manages legal matters and ensures the legal compliance of Aragon, which is a platform for building and running decentralized autonomous organizations. And he's going to speak with us today about how DAOs are making huge strides in the legal sphere as of late, especially with Wyoming's blockchain bill number 38 having recently passed through. And he's also going to speak about the enormous flexibility that we can enjoy if that legislation is approved, and how these organisations will help structure their affairs using any mix of statutory filings from legal agreements, smart contracts, and how we organise them in the long term. We got a lot to get through, so buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Portugal, where José Pinto from Aragon is waiting to speak with us now. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Basically, I started as a corporate lawyer working for an international law firm, and I was advising some big tech companies on mostly M&A, IP, and tax law. But I've always been pretty much involved in tech. So in 2012, while practicing law, I felt a need to get back to the university and study computer science. And that's when around 2013 and 14, I had my first experience with Bitcoin. After that, I had the opportunity to work with some amazing teams. Also during the ICO rush in 2017-18, that's when I moved to Switzerland. And that's where I got involved with Aragon and so-called Crypto Valley in Zug. And we've been working in the decentralized applications and governance protocols with DAOs, basically.
And if you were introduced to Bitcoin back in 2013, I've got to ask, is there any stories there about how you bought a pizza with 300 Bitcoin or something that's now worth a couple of million? Is it? Do you have any stories like that?
Unfortunately, I didn't. I didn't buy much back then because, my first gut feeling about that wasn't that great. So I was quite reluctant over Bitcoin. I didn't know how it was going to be accepted later on. So my first feeling was that's a scam. That's probably not going to work out. But then based on the technology and how, everything started from there, it's a really interesting piece of technology, and I'm really happy to be involved with that.
And it has been amazing to watch everything evolve over the last 10 years. And today, though, we will have people listening from a variety of backgrounds. So just to set the scene and allow everyone to get on the same page, can you tell the listeners a little bit more about exactly what a decentralized autonomous organization is? Because they may have seen DAO, and that acronym written everywhere, and probably been a little bit too intimidated or afraid to ask anyone what it actually means. But can you set the scene there?
Sure. So DAO stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization, which basically a DAO is a tool, it's a governance software tool built on programmable blockchain software called smart contracts, which allows a self or autonomous regulation of an organization, whether a community, a group of users. And it can be human-based or even based on a programmable algorithm itself. And it's set out for a specific purpose, which is agreed between the community members. So it's basically a form of governance, a tool set out for governance that allows the interaction of many players of a very large community. We call it autonomous because they can rely on a set of principles and rules on programmable agreements, which are built on Ethereum, which can be also self-executable and enforceable. And decentralized because this governance model does not rely upon on a central organization, but instead on a public and trustless self-sovereignty of a community. I personally believe that DAOs are the evolution of enterprises, and this is what an enterprise in the internet era looked like. So allowing the participation of a large number of members in a very transparent and immutable process.
And with Wyoming's blockchain bill number 38 recently passing, I'm curious, can you tell me a little bit more about how DAOs are actually making huge strides in the legal sphere as of late? Because I seem to be seeing more and more stories around this.
So the implementation of DAOs has struggled with some difficulties. And one of those was regarding the regulatory side and the personal liability of the members engaging in the DAO. So the existing legal framework for that and in different jurisdictions was setting this out as general partnerships between the DAO members. This means that each member would be liable not only for his actions but also for his partner's actions, which obviously created a major blocker for the implementation of DAOs and the use of technology. And now, what Wyoming did was actually try to determine whether if it would be possible to overcome this limitation, and also to see if a DAO itself could enter into agreements with other entities from the traditional work. What it would be like just to set out a payment, a transfer of assets, to enter into contracts, etc., as any traditional corporation. So. And this is precisely what this new bill tries to resolve. So recognizing and incorporating DAOs as legal entities, providing them with a set of rules capable of creating legal certainty, not only between the DAO members, but also creating trust to third parties that interact with these organizations.
Presumably, if that legislation's approved, it would offer enormous flexibility to them, wouldn't it?
The recognition and incorporation of DAOs as LLCs in Wyoming, I believe, represents an important step towards the mainstream adoption of DAOs, as it will become possible to incorporate a DAO directly as an LLC with less paperwork, just by choosing some articles on some templates, and the DAO is set up. So this will allow the engagement of thousands of members living in different jurisdictions that will be able to participate in the governance through a DAO directly, through voting apps, in the most transparent, public, fair, and democratic process. And I think that as an autonomous legal entity, which is the scope of this new bill created in Wyoming, it will be possible to enter into different agreements with traditional corporations and enterprises. And this will grant a high level of trust to the DAO ecosystem.
And just to bring to life what we're talking about here, do you have any real-world examples that will help listeners understand how a decentralized autonomous organisation will help structure their affairs using any mix of statutory filings, legal agreements, or smart contracts to organise in the long term?
Well, sure. So one of the most common examples for DAO is the analogy of a bank account with multiple signatories. It could be thousands of members in the DAO in which you can program the approval needed to use that account, or set up different limits of thresholds to execute transactions or payments automatically. The main difference is that you can do this almost for free, and all transactions are registered in the public blockchain, granting transparency to the process and involving lots of members of that community. From this model, you can think of more elaborate examples, like, for example, an investment fund in which you can create a DAO to pull investment contributions from the DAO members, in which they control the funds, they choose where to invest in, or even decide how to distribute dividends automatically on a programmable smart contract. It could depend on a certain threshold that is achieved. And this, of course, if it's possible according to any legal framework applicable, as you don't want to enter in any securities law. So you can program in customized smart contracts in a way that regulates the management of any funds. So in practice, a DAO can have programmable smart contracts that are approved by the DAO members and based on approved resolutions and legal agreements, which are self-enforceable. Thinking of other examples, so if you look at this trend on NFT collections, you can use a DAO to manage an NFT fund or NFT asset and controlled by members of the DAO that will govern tokens, deciding on the collective management of the art pieces. And then other examples will be like the DAOs for the self-governance of algorithms that could be programmable to govern autonomous agents, like a fleet of cars or other EOTs in the future.
And where does Aragon fit into this? Can you expand on who your customers are and the kind of problems that you're setting out to solve for them?
Yeah, sure. So Aragon is the leading infrastructure platform. So it's the main DAO ecosystem. And we have been providing the technology and applications and helping users to create and customize DAOs according to their needs, preferences, and for which purpose they choose. So our customers are mainly users that want to set up a governance tool to manage assets in a large group of members, and to interact in the most transparent public way, but also in an immutable and enforceable manner, because it's autonomously executed through a programmable smart contract that you can pre-approve before it's deployed. You can easily create a DAO in our platform. It's very easy to distribute the tokens to other users. If you have any need, for any assistance, you can just reach out to our team, and we can provide all the assistance you need throughout the process. And on top of that, we provide also an online dispute resolution system called the Aragon Court, which is mainly composed by jurors, arbiters, that will resolve any dispute within the DAO or within the DAO ecosystem, also to provide some trust to our users. So basically, we are solving the transparency and enforceability concerns within the DAO ecosystem, within a DAO itself, and then with the DAO ecosystem.
And before you came on the podcast today, I was reading that Aragon is currently undergoing a transition to consolidate your digital juror network, which is well known for underpinning more than 1,600 global permissionless and decentralized communities. But for people that are listening that are unaware of all that, can you expand on that for me?
So we're basically transitioning to Aragon V2 with also some improvements on Aragon Court. As I said previously, so Aragon Court is a dispute resolution system designed to handle disputes which cannot be arbitrated by smart contracts. in an automatic manner. So this is achieved by setting out a group of jurors that will resolve each dispute in which they will be required to vote. And Aragon Court is the default dispute resolver for Aragon DAOs, but can also be integrated in other ecosystems, or actually any system that requires secure and non-biased decision-making for any kind of dispute. So even if you have a DAO in other ecosystem, if you have like agreements or templates that preview the dispute resolution with the Aragon Court, it is pretty much easy to reach out to the Aragon Court and use our system to resolve those disputes. So we're basically now with Aragon V2 solving the problem with that integration of Aragon agreements in the Aragon Court by having the possibility also to have disputes based on supporting documents and agreements. So the case disputes are assessed by a human juror based on supporting documentation to decide on the outcome. So it's like a consolidation of the court system on a dispute resolution system that we already had.
And I think if we go back to 2017, we've all seen so many projects there which were built on future promises, but now we're starting to see real deliverables. And the things that excite me, especially when researching you guys, is how DeFi projects such as Curve, mStable, and also Aragon's platform and services for financial transparency, asset management, and protocol governance are all being brought to life here, and we're seeing real-world examples and use cases. But can you expand on this? Because it feels like a really exciting time in the industry right now.
So these projects, the decentralized finance projects, they're based on the participation of the users for as depositors or borrowers. So depositors mainly provide liquidity to the market and earn some income. And borrowers are also able to borrow money from these structures when it's over a collateralized or under collateralized liquidity pool. And also, on the earning of some rewards or some tokens by participating on those protocols. The main thing is that these projects are using DAOs to become more transparent and decentralized, and also to coordinate the incentives for the stakeholders for each project, and that's why some of them are using our protocol in order to achieve that.
Now, I am conscious that today's conversation is all about introducing new people outside of the industry to your technology and the problems that you're solving. But we will have a few loyal members of your community, I suspect, listening to us today, hoping to get some sneak peek of an update in partnerships and how you will increase adoption and a whole other range of topics there, and such as what is next for Aragon. And I appreciate you probably can't share too much with us today, but are there any teasers that you can leave your community today? Sure.
So there's pretty much going on right now. So as I mentioned before, we're about to transition to Aragon V2 in that progressive rollout that I mentioned. This is going to play out very gradually, and also consulting the community and for their feedback. Aragon V1 was created on a totally different environment, as I said. So transaction costs on Ethereum were so low at the time; they're much higher today. And we are focusing also in very different possibilities and a variety of scenarios to implement new features on the DAO ecosystem. We're also launching a new decentralized voting platform called Voice we are very excited about this. We have acquired a new team back in December 2020, and this will include the possibility to cast off-chain votes for free, and also the integration with execution for those decisions on DAOs. So it's not only merely for signaling purposes, but also to execute those decisions. And that will allow DAOs just to schedule actions automatically based on the author of proposals and on those votes casted. And then we have also the implementations on Aragon Court based on Aragon V2, and a partnership with UMA based on a KPI options campaign that we're about to launch. And yeah, that's a lot already in our hands for the future.
Sounds like you're going to be incredibly busy. Great problems to have. And a question I always like to ask my guests, though, before I let them go, is there a particular song that has inspired you in the past, helped you in your career, or helped you get your head in the zone before going on stage, or maybe a podcast, or just reminds you of technology? What would your song be and why?
Yeah, sure. So I'm pretty much into electronic music these days. Yeah. So I'll go for Motherboard by Daft Punk. It's an instrumental tune, but I'm sure it will sound fresh and new in 200 years from now. And also to sign up the determination of the band this year. So that would be my guilty pleasure, yeah.
Oh, that's not a guilty pleasure. That's a cracking tune. A good choice. And I'll proudly add that one to the Spotify playlist for this podcast. But before I let you go, can you remind the listeners of where they can find you online, join your community, or contact your team if they've got any questions?
Yeah, so feel free to join our server on Discord. And also on Twitter, we are Aragon Project. And also on Telegram. So feel free to reach out on any of these platforms.
Well, every day on this podcast, we try and demystify technology and put it in a language that everybody can understand. And I think you've done that perfectly and eloquently with decentralized autonomous organizations today. There'll be a lot of people would have heard of it, read a little bit about it, but I'm hoping that they've got a much better understanding of that and also where Aragon fit into that future too. But more than anything, Jose, just thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Aragon is currently undergoing a transition to consolidate its digital juror network and is well known for underpinning more than 1,600 global permissionless and decentralized communities. And DeFi projects like Curve and mStable are also using Aragon's platform and services for financial transparency, asset management and protocol governance. But I am intrigued in where this is going to take us, how it's going to revolutionise businesses, releasing blockchain companies from the shackles of legal obscurity. It seems to be an incredibly exciting space, so I will be staying in touch with Jose and hopefully update you all with how they're getting on there. But over to you, please email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. My website is techblogwriter.co.uk. Let's keep this conversation going, keep learning from each other and see where it takes us. But that's it for today's episode. So a big thank you for listening as always. I'll see you all again tomorrow. And a big thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.